Welcome back to BLOCKTV. It's time now for Traders Take, and as the weekend wraps up, we've seen some actual reasonable volatility over the weekend, taking us across a range of different price points. But at the same time, here we are, and we're ending up back in that same band, hovering at the time of recording around the low to mid 10,000s for Bitcoin. And I just need some help making sense of it. So who do I turn to? Well, of course, none other than our very own Joe Saz from New York. Joe, absolute pleasure as always. What can you tell me? What does this all mean? Draw some conclusions, find me some patterns out of all this, because it just seems like mushy chaos.
Yeah, and it certainly is. Right now, it's kind of we're playing coin flips right now. We're not really in a very trended area. Like trended is probably the wrong word. We're kind of in a trendless zone right now. It's like we've had a couple super bad crashes on Friday, reaching nearly a high of 11K, and then crashing all the way down to 10,250. I mean, that was bad. We had a slight, trend moving in toward the top of the descending triangle, and I'll bring all that up in a sec. But it's just like right now, in the past like 30 minutes, we had some price action. So let's jump into the charts and I'll kind of think out loud here. So this is pretty big. I want to zoom out a little bit. This is Bitcoin US dollar on the 15-minute. So I just wanted to see what this volume was like relative to other volume area in price action, and it looks like we're kind of struggling here. There's a lot of bullishness, as you can see. We suffer a dump, and then we carry on forward, upward for a little bit, and then bam. This just really feels like an accumulator is just dumping their bags on people that are hopeless bulls. That's what I see in the charts right now. I mean, all this looks pretty organic, a little bit vertical, but that could be FOMO. A little bit vertical over here, that could be, FOMO accumulation kind of stuff. But then we have just vertical jumps. I mean, after some serious climbs, it's just ridiculous. And this is what makes Bitcoin so hard to trade. This is what gets people, annihilated. So anyways, and you can see we came into a dump here, followed through, re-entered the wick space, made a kind of lower low area, but we fought our way out of it, came back, and then flatlined for a bit, fell off a cliff again, just out of nowhere. So this candle accounts for 1.38% price action, low of 10,231, and a high of 10,517. So a $300 price swing there, and that's pretty significant for a Sunday. And I think that's probably bad going into the week like this. It just depends. So let's take a quick look also at the daily. But I do expect us to at least return back to this wick space. I mean, as you can see, we're spending a bit of time here. If I was to draw a horizontal ray here, you can see that this is kind of an area that is now being poked at. It's in jeopardy. 10K was resistance on the way down to 9,500. It was not, when I say resistance, I mean support. It was supporting buyers. Bulls at in the low 10,000 range from 10.1 to 10.3 before we broke down to 9,500, and as we broke down, we blew right back up through it, as you can see here. This is Bitcoin US dollar on the daily. We blew right back up through 10K, and now I'm not very certain that 10K is going to be the support people hope it will be this time around. You can see that it was really strong support, even poking our heads beneath it, but fighting our way to keep our bodies above the water here, pretty much for a few weeks. I mean, look at these. These came close, 1013. So we fought 10K for so long and just, ultimately broke down. And now we just shredded right past through it. And I think that this run is starting to feel toppy and come to an end. It's very, I was expecting this to potentially hit the 11.3 area, and hit hopefully a 9 count, a sequential 9. And that would have been the perfect trade, Asher. I would have been like jumping for joy if this thing hit a sequential 6, 7, 8, 9, and pumped up into this range and then just fell off a cliff, kind of like what we had over here with this 9 cell. That would have been ideal, but we played the hand we're dealt, not the hand we want. This is looking a bit toppy. We have a big bit of volume on the daily here on this day that broke us below the 50 MA with the close beneath it. You can see there was diminishing volume headed into that price move as we were tightening the gap in between this horizontal trend line, which is kind of a range that's acted as resistance and support in the past number of months. And the 50 moving average, you could see right as we were tightening this gap, there was decreasing volume. and we ended up just popping up and then flying back down through it. So I think it's pretty bad as long as we're fighting with the 50 MA instead of being supported or resisted by it. I would lean bearish against the 50 MA since we're fighting right alongside it. I don't really like that, especially considering how altcoins have reacted. One thing to note, though, I still think that we could be in a macro bear trend right now, considering this death cross of the MACD. This is Bitcoin US dollar on the weekly, by the way. I mean, if I was to look at candles, take a quick look here. I mean, considering the weekly's coming to an end, it's important to take a quick. We're looking at a bullish engulfing candle followed by two kind of bearish spinning tops. It's kind of neutral in my opinion. This isn't really that significant. And I have a feeling that the next about 10 hours from now, we're going to see the majority of the day's price action. I think it's going to get much worse. I think it's going to get much more volatile. I'm not quite sure which, considering that we just had a dump. I don't know, it's hard to say. But the thing that I did want to bring up, and I might have brought up in front of you, Asher, is the last time we had a significant bearish crossover on the weekly MACD was near the all-time high, 20K. So, I mean, we have now, again, as you can see, a bearish crossover of the weekly MACD, moving average convergence, divergence, and kind of some neutral activity going on during that end of the descending triangle phase into breakdown from 6K. So I don't know. I think we could be in a macro bear trend now, and anything that happens, you know, on the daily is just going to be, it could just be, you know, for naught. We had a bullish crossover, and you know, as a result of a pump, and it's really not, it hasn't carried us much further. And I don't know. I don't rely too heavily on indicators though, so I could just very well be a bear looking for a narrative, and the MACD could very well be it. But I am feeling that the more we fight the 50 MA, the worse off it is for us.
But so Joe, then I wanted to ask as well. I mean, we've finally seen, particularly in the last 24 hours, we saw a stumble, as it were, in the Bitcoin dominance narrative. We saw alts claw back a little bit of ground. I mean, relative to the last few weeks and months, seemingly nothing, but still start to claw back a little bit. Do you think, as some people have put forward, there's a narrative that says this could be the chance for an altcoin resurgence, at least a little bit, or do you think this is just a bump on the radar?
At least a little bit is probably the key word there. I would say there's room for at least a little bit, but I mean, is altcoin season coming to town? I really don't think so. So let's look at the dominance charts and kind of go over this as we talk about it. I mean, Bitcoin hit a high of 73.29% just the other day. You know, it might help to see this in candle form. So a couple days ago, we were sitting at a nice and pretty 73%, and now we're only down to 72. I mean, this isn't like a steep crash in altcoin dominance. This is relatively small. So, you know, altcoin dominance, what's it doing to altcoin or Bitcoin dominance? Its short decrease has caused altcoins to jump up a little bit. So that does tell us that there is money in the space, and it might be moving from Bitcoin to alts. It probably means that, you know, if this was going down and altcoin dominance was going down, that would probably mean people were exiting to cash, and that would probably be one of the more dangerous scenarios for altcoins, and Bitcoin as well. But you know, man, I think the key word in what you said was little. You know, a tiny little pause here. I don't think that that Bitcoin's run is going to last. I don't think that this 9,000 support, I'm not convinced yet that it is going to be held for too much longer. And so as long as that's the case, then, you know, we're probably looking at a breakdown in Bitcoin. Now, does that mean altcoiners are going to be able to hop on board and ride the money train and try to catch 300% upside move? I guess, let's say if that's what people are hoping for, it's not what I'm betting on. I'm betting on maybe small moves, but I'm not very confident overall. But that's just me. I think if you're betting on altcoins, you're not going to have a good time. Classic case of you know, this could really just crush the last bit of life out of altcoiners. But I think this is, again, I'm not assuming that 4,000 is going to turn to 4,000 cryptos, altcoins are going to turn to just Bitcoin overnight. I do think this is going to be a process, and I think the first part of that process is probably from thousands to 100-ish, hundreds.
So then, looking at some of those coins that did do well, I mean, we saw Bitcoin Cash had a good, double-digit resurgence in the last 24 hours. We've seen some interesting moves around the space. Are there any particular alts you think are worth watching right now? At least, ideology aside, from a pure trading perspective, is there anything catching the eye?
From a trading perspective, I would say, let's look at these. Let's take a quick scan here, and I want to look at Bcash, like you said. So here's Litecoin. All right, so let's take a look at these. We all know that that dominance just caused a small surge in alt. So let's just look relative to the US dollar, starting with Ethereum quickly. Small move to the upside. We're still looking at a bearish crossover over the short and long-term moving averages. This is still looking very bearish. And let's just draw this out on a weekly. Still looking pretty bad. We're supported down here in the $90 range. Maybe high 80s. So Ethereum is looking at lower lows for sure, in my opinion. We are on a weekly 9 buy, so we could have a small pullback, but I think it's still dangerous, very dangerous right now. And we're now resisting the 50 MA on the weekly. I'm not very bullish on Ethereum. Let's take a look at Bcash, BCH. I think they retained their the Bcash ticker, BCH. Yeah. So all right, yeah, we're actually looking pretty bad here too. So as far as trades are concerned, ideology aside, I would say Ethereum might be poised for a bounce on the weekly chart, but it was looking very bad because of the bearish crossover of the short and long-term moving average. Now, the only reason why I'm taking altcoin moving averages a bit more seriously than Bitcoin is because you could see that we've pretty much, across the board, once we broke the 50, it's been violent breakdowns. Now, Ethereum is sitting, relative to where Bitcoin Cash is sitting right up against the 200 MA. Ethereum's like down here somewhere. So I would say we're looking a little bit dangerous than something like Bcash. We've rounded out, created a top. There was some serious rejection of a steep downside move beneath the 200 MA. Now, moving average, supported, broke, and resisted, inverted hammer. So this is just looking bad in my eyes, and I would say we're probably looking at a bearish crossover of the moving averages, the 50 and 200, when there's probably going to be a big price move to the downside. So we're looking at 4% here, 4.5% to the upside, spinning top, putting us at just under 1% total body volume. And if this holds and we close like this, moving into a new week, I have a feeling this is just going to get way more ugly. But other than that, oh wow, we have a weird bit of information here. Yeah, other than that, I would say, the weekly is looking kind of bad to neutral. Struggling with the 50 MA is not what we want to be doing right now. If anything, we want to be supported by it, how we were during the run-up, and now that we're not, I'm not very confident. I know I'm trying to move fast. This is one that I'm very curious about, though. I think I'm really curious to see how XRP plays out and fights its way through all this, because it does have, this is a channel that we discussed for so long, right? Between this dotted line and this horizontal line, and pretty much every time we broke out of it, we came back to it. Even this steep breakout, 25% move to the upside, and then we came right back into it. But we came back into it with a lot of velocity, capped out the upside move, came back in, and we broke right through it. So now we found, I'm wondering, are we going to rejoin this channel, get back into the 28 cent to 30 cent, 33 cent range, or are we going to continue our descent? And it looks like there's a little bit of hope on Saturday, 4% move to the upside or 3.5% move to the upside. But that upside's now been capped out. I'm just going to get this out of the way. And we're now looking at a pretty bearish, it's not quite an inverted hammer yet. I'd like to see a little more red body to it, and maybe even a close below this before I'm really bearish. But I would say that XRP is kind of in a danger zone right now, considering the velocity of this trend line. I might want to move this right here just so that it can be a bit cleaner. So yeah, I mean, I would say this is probably one of the most accurate playouts. You could see that this has been rejected by the body and wicks. We've had a couple times where we popped our head above it, rejection, and steep rejection as we tried to break out through this area. So it could very well be that lower lows are on the table. And I think that if Bitcoin dominance remains at its 70% plus range, then I just don't see, again, one of the questions I've been asking is where's the money coming from? And I don't think it's really coming from, too many outside sources. I'm not convincing my grandma to start stockpiling Bitcoin. You know what I'm saying? It's not the same questions we had back in 2017. How do I buy? Where do I buy? What do I do with it? So, I still think that the money is coming from stacking sats, people who are currently supporters and hodlers of different projects. So it's really isolated money. And so as long as that continues to be the case, and, we're looking at some, we're not looking at fresh blood, therefore we're probably looking at organic trading space, which probably means that when things start looking bad, which they're probably going to soon since there's no new money coming into the space, then things are going to accelerate to the downside much more quickly across the board. And that does include Bitcoin. Especially Bitcoin, we're in a very clear descending triangle on the daily. So Bitcoin, it does have a probabilistic outlook of breaking down. And I think if that happens, I just don't think we have enough money coming in for it to be alt season. I just don't see it happening. It's going to be hard for people to trust something other than Bitcoin, especially as a trader, if it starts crashing.
Yeah, well, it seems, as you say, Joe, that we could be in for another harsh but hopefully brief winter. We'll have to see how that plays out looking into the future of cryptocurrencies as it stands at the moment. But in the meantime, we'll always have your fine analysis, Joe, and I thank you again for joining us today for today's Traders Takes. Stay with us at blocktv.com for all the latest in news and information. I'm Asher Westrop Evans. Thanks for watching.
For more news and updates, follow us on Twitter.